I'm Melissa McCracken with the Kentucky Pollution Prevention Center located at the University of Louisville, and I'll be serving as the facilitator. Here's a view of today's agenda. We have a lot of information to share, and we'll move along and work to stay on time. I want to thank our panelist speakers in advance for their efforts to help make this webinar possible. At first session, we're going to have Pam Swingle with EPA Region 4, who will be talking about drafting the proposal narrative. Up next is Kathy Davey with EPA Headquarters, who will be talking about new requirements and essentials to include in your grant proposal. Then we have two sessions related to effective approach to collecting and reporting metrics, one from a technical assistant provider perspective from Roger Price with PennTap, and another from Keith Bovair, who's with the Virginia Department for Environmental Quality, and he's going to be talking about their state leadership program and how they do their metrics gathering. You'll note that there are two question and answer times listed. One comes after the first two speakers and the other after the final two speakers. All attendees are in listen-only mode, and we ask that questions be submitted using the chat function. Jeff Burke, MPPR's Executive Director, will be sharing questions received during the designated times. So talking just a little bit about the objectives for today, we have designed this webinar to provide a snapshot view of various elements of grant writing. We've pulled together an experienced panel of speakers to help share useful information and resources to support writing the grants for P2 projects. We look to increase grant writing capacity of technical service providers and state P2 program personnel. And MPPR is interested in hearing what you'd like to learn more about or dive deeper into. You'll be given the opportunity to provide your input on the evaluation form following the webinar. So we will look to you to help us decide what might be useful for future presentations. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Pam Swingle for her presentation on drafting the proposal narrative.
Hi, Lissa. Thank you. And bear with me for a second while I get my presentation to do full screen. I'm Pam Swingle. I'm with EPA Region 4 in Atlanta. We have the 8 southeastern states. If there's some of my other regional colleagues on, I like to say we're the biggest and most important, but I probably shouldn't do that. I am trying to get my screen to do full here. Hang on a second. I'm here to talk to you about the proposal narrative and how you find grants and locate them through the federal government, but I also wanted to suggest that you also look at foundations. So let me get that out of the way. All right, everybody see full screen? All right. So first I want to just address the, finding grants, and all federal grants now have to go on grants.gov. I don't know who's on the phone, so everybody may already know this, but it's very important that you get registered in advance for that. It also will give you a notification if there's certain grants that are coming out, so you can sign up for environmental grants, pollution prevention. If you're interested in recycling grants, you can actually put those keywords and you'll get announcements. It's also important that you get to know your agency contacts. For us in the region, we like for people to call us before the RFP comes out. If you know that there's an annual grant, give folks a call sometime in the summer or the fall and talk to them about your potential ideas or when the timeline is. And then some programs in the region have workshops on grant writing and how to be successful too. So, and then I put foundations on there just because I think that people forget that there are some foundations out there that will fund pollution prevention grants or environmental programs. So don't forget to look into those. So our standard RFP format, and they vary from agency to agency, but this is our typical format where we have funding type, the description and submission deadlines, we have a summary of the announcement, and the funding opportunity description. The most important piece is for you you all to try to figure out how to, if you should apply, is to look at the grant program requirements in the RFP and look at eligibility, if your agency or organization is eligible for the program, if what is the terminology of the program, what are those keywords that you should use in writing your RFP or writing your proposal. Cost sharing and matching requirements, they're different from grant to grant. For instance, our state grants are 50-50 match. Our source reduction assistance grants are 5% match. The funding period, how long will that allow you to stretch the project, and then grant results and measurements. And I know Kathy Davies on the phone. She's going to talk to you about measurement and getting those grant results. And those are really important. So in the submission requirements, you have threshold requirements that you have to meet before you could even get to the review committee. And that usually is, for us, it's if you identify a regional priority as part of the proposal, if you comply with the grant program requirements as a whole, and the task in the program must be eligible. For instance, for pollution prevention grants, we cannot fund recycling projects, and sometimes folks have a hard time differentiating that. So just be sure that your tasks and activities are eligible for whichever grant program you're going into. Then the submission requirements, they vary from agency to agency and can vary from program to program too. Most of the time there's a page limit and font size. If you go over too many pages, you can get kicked out. Submission to grants.gov, some programs require that. And make sure you have the proper forms and you meet the deadlines. So the evaluation criteria is probably the most, well, it is the most important thing you should look at. If you meet those first threshold criteria and your project fits all those, you first need to, I cannot stress this enough, that you need to address all of the criteria. Don't make assumptions that the reviewers know things about your office. Because if you don't address all of the criteria, you can score poorly on the proposal, even though the reviewers might think it's a great project. If you didn't address all the criteria, they may have had to score you very low on one area. So it's very important to do that. The grants are on a point system for reviewers to rank the proposals, so they're fairly structured. And they include programmatic capability of your, what's your programmatic capability, your organization, and past performance. Again, don't make assumptions that even though you know the folks at the agency, many times our review committees have no idea or have no experience with organizations that are applying. So just make assumptions that they don't know anything about you. Past performance is very important. If it's a first-time grant that you're applying for, you don't get scored poorly on that. You get scored neutrally. However, if you continue to apply for federal grants, it's really important that you have a good past performance to continue to apply. So our proposal elements are fairly straightforward. You have a project strategy. You have to address the agency's concerns or issues. For us, it's environmental or human health issues. You have to have good results. For us, it's environmental results, and I think Kathy's going to go over that for you in just a little bit. But it's important that you have measurable results. That's a big part of the criteria for our grants. There has to be a degree of transferability. It needs to be something that can be transferred from one community to another or one organization to another, something that can be used by others that helps your score. Partnerships and collaborations are very important to us, and having a good budget detail and timeline is very important too. So I know that I only had 10 minutes, so this is my last slide, and I wanted to just give you some quick tips and suggestions. And these are the things that we tell people when we talk to them about writing a proposal. First of all, start early, before the RFP is even released, because we cannot, as agency employees, talk to you after the RFP is released because of competition rules. So if you're interested in applying for a grant, you think you have an idea, it's always helpful to brainstorm those ideas with other organizations, with the organization that funds, but you can't do that after the RFP is released. Be sure your organization is eligible. Don't put yourself through all the writing and then find out that your organization's not eligible. For instance, we had a nonprofit that applied, and they would have been eligible, but they weren't officially a nonprofit yet. They had put all their paperwork in, but they hadn't received it yet. So they found out they couldn't apply. Match your project with eligible funding. So make sure that your project is going to fit. Line up your partners in advance. Start talking early. That goes with starting early. Be clear and concise with your statements. Eliminate the flowery language. We need to know what the project is going to do, what are the results of that project, and what are the benefits. And then provide enough information for reviewers to get the whole picture. So this is a challenge because sometimes our limitations are 6 pages. So you have to be concise, but you also have to have enough information that our reviewers can give you good scores on that criteria. And again, don't assume the reviewers know your organization or your work. And most important, and I stress this all the time, is follow all the instructions and address all the criteria. So many times we have people who just missed, didn't read the solicitation well and missed an instruction, or they left out a criteria and they would have had a great project, but they didn't score well because they didn't do those 2 fundamental things. And I should have also put on this, don't be overwhelmed by the solicitation. A lot of times they look really huge, so just kind of delve into it with an open mind and think, okay, I need to look at these things one step at a time because they can be a little intimidating if you're a first-time grant writer. And then I want to wish you good luck when you write your proposals. And I put my contact information up here. I think this is going to be up on NPPR's website if you have any questions. And I think I have stayed within my 10 minutes. Lissa?
Thanks, Pam. You did just perfect.
Okay, great.
Right on time, and a lot of basic but I know critical tips to share. Okay, at this point we're going to move on to Kathy Davey, going to be talking about some of the new requirements, updates to requirements and proposals, and some of those essentials to include, and you heard Pam allude to some of those, so we'll turn over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Lissa, and thank you, Pam, for laying that, the foundation. That's very helpful because I'm just going to emphasize certain parts, and it's really helpful to put it in the whole context. So let me just get rid of the unnecessary parts here. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about results and their documentation and the way to handle that during the grant application process. So we will be talking about the P2 and the SRA grants, and specifically we're going to talk about a new requirement in the 2014 RFP, Request for Proposals, that asks people to link their results to the description of activities that occurs. So we'll just go from there. So our discussion goals is to understand how the disaggregation of results in the reports and the way that's handled in the application increases the value of understanding those results, how they're measured, to EPA, exploring this new requirement, and then looking forward to any questions and comments that you have during the Q&A period. So for those who have been in the grant process before, for anyone who's new, we've been operating for years under EPA's Order on Environmental Results with respect to EPA assistance agreements, which covers grants, and which says that these agreements should be oriented to achieving results. For those who've been doing grants for a while, both EPA and the grantees now have years of experience in addressing environmental results and explaining how those results got measured in the grant request, proposal, and report process. So from that experience, we can say that when facility-level pollution prevention work is occurring through a grant and grantees write reports, grantees have self-selected whether they are going to report their results sort of at the facility level or broken down, you know, in some way, or whether they are going to roll up their results into one total. Now, with experience from having looked at both kinds of reporting, we can tell you that when the results come in and it's broken down and it's more descriptive about what was done and therefore what results came out of that, it means much more to EPA. So when we can see, you know, I can move through this because it's going to sort of come back to the same theme. If we can tell that a boiler was replaced or that some input was changed or that it was a sector-level project where, you know, a number of companies in the same sector all did the same thing, whether it was, you know, auto body or hospitals or hotels, we get a pretty clear sense of what's going on. If, however, we get results that are just sort of a total, and that's even when people remind us what the focus of their technical assistance program was or what their leadership program was. In other words, they're just sort of reiterating what they said they were going to do. If that's all we get and the results are totaled, it's really pretty hard for us to really see what was going on. So we've been doing this for a while, and we've been tracking activities, and we've gotten to the point where if we know what was done, we already have, even without the description of the measurement methodology, a pretty good understanding of what we think is a normal range of expected results. And we're very liberal in that way, very generous. We're not trying to get down to, you know, great precision. We're just trying to keep it within the realm of credibility. And the reason it's gotten to this is because measurement methodologies have really advanced over the years. They've become a lot more consistent. So that factor is just more steady. So to come back to educating EPA, we get a much more concrete sense of grant activities and results when it's broken down to the level where we can see this activity, that result. This is a great source of information for EPA. Grant results are our eyes and ears for the P2 program. You know, we're not all seeing, we're not all knowing, so the very transparency with which something is reported to us becomes extremely valuable. We understand that circumstances are not always, well, circumstances are not within the control of the grantee, and sometimes results will be bigger, results will be smaller depending on those circumstances. When we can see and understand that, this has become a very valuable experience to EPA because we're, you know, not going on sort of blind assumptions. We're following trends. We're seeing what companies are doing, what obstacles they're running into. That's the information we need. There's also the advantage of when we understand it right away, we're not going to be following up and trying to get clarification over the phone, and grant results become a more credible source of information. So we decided to put this into the RFP itself as a requirement as of 2014. So we ask that applicants describe the format that they are going to use when they get, assuming they get the grant, when they're doing their grant report, how are they going to show disaggregated results. Now this is more work. for some who haven't done it. So we've been mindful of that and have minimized the workload in other requirements. I want to just cover that right away. So for any given project, grantee applicants are asked to estimate results. They're asked to state their data collection approaches and to state their result measurement approaches. And in the past, our guidance has emphasized those things and provided a lot of sort of detailed examples that applicants could think that they need to follow that level of detail. And we've cut it back to saying really a sentence or two is enough to address each of these elements for a project. We've even, because we understand the challenges that people often face in estimating their results, we've even put in writing that it's okay to say that you have guessed, and we will consider that an adequate response. So it's our hope that by alleviating that kind of responsibility in the beginning, it frees up people's time for displaying their information at the end. The appendix, Appendix C in the RFP, is a source of examples on the kinds of formatting that we think would work for this, and we try to keep it as simple as possible. So it might be a paragraph description, a simple table. If it's somebody who has had grants before and who has put this information out before, like internship programs, and they actually have some prior information on the web, just providing a simple link to a prior table where they display their results, that works for us. Appendix C gives sample formats for the common projects that we are used to seeing in grant proposals and grant reports. We are flexible on what people do, communicating with us in terms of being flexible and responsive works for us. Responsiveness is better than silence, so it goes back to Pam's point that addressing this as a requirement is important to us. We understand that in some cases disaggregation is going to present a problem. And so if someone explains why it would be burdensome, we will consider that they're responding to our request, they've explained it, that works. We also want to make clear that we're not expecting people to name facilities. I mean, they may if they want to, but you know, facility A, facility B, that's adequate. If there are particular confidentiality concerns, again, we will consider it responsive if somebody explains what that is and what's the most they're able to do, because we will have, again, considered that they considered what we said and they responded to it directly. And we also provide an assurance in Appendix C that we will protect the identity of any named entities and that we will never release that identity unless we have gone through the grantee and talked to the entity. It might be like a wonderful example that we would like to share with others, but we're never going to do that unless we get permission and the entity itself thinks it's a good idea. These are my final points. Oh, and let me pause because I think I have skipped over what our results are. And for those who may be new to doing these grants, it's important for me to cover briefly what our environmental results are that we are looking for at this sort of breakout level. So we collect information on greenhouse gas results. It comes from energy conservation and use of fuels and electricity and so forth. We also measure pounds of hazardous releases and materials, getting reductions in those pounds, reduced use of water, which we measure in gallons of water, and the cost savings that are associated with any of those three steps. So those are the results that we would like to see linked to particular activities that are undertaken with grants. So we would like to just, let's see, in summing up, the requirements in the grant application, if the applicant is successful, should appear in the grant terms and conditions with respect to how the results will be formatted in a grant report. I also wanted to make a note in the past performance part of the application. Even transparency there is really valued by EPA. I was able to review one grant, and I noticed that someone explained that this is the results that they expected, and these were the results they got, and this was sort of, you know, why they didn't turn out the way they expected. That was so valuable. It showed that that grantee, I think, understood how much EPA can learn from transparency and why it values that transparency. So, you know, that was very useful information, and you know, reflected well in understanding the importance of transparency. And wrapping up, during the Q&A, any questions or interests that you have, in, particularly when it comes to confidentiality or unusual burdens, I'll be glad to answer any of those questions, and appreciate everyone being on the phone to listen to the presentation. Back to you, Lissa.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. So with that, does anybody have any questions now for the first two speakers?
Lissa, we did have one question, and that was, would copies of the slides be available? And the answer to that question is we will be posting the entire webinar up on the NPPR website at www.p2.org sometime by the end of the month. And that was the only question we had.
Okay. I know as far as with Kathy's presentation, it's for us at KPPC, having written many grants, we get very used to the look of you know, when the P2G or the SRA comes out, but realizing that we always have to go back and reread it from the very beginning once again, and not take anything for granted in the fact that something's the same as it was last year, because have noticed some subtle differences. So you know, that would be one thing to say, is be sure to, when it's a new year and a new proposal, read it as if you've read it for the first time. Okay, at this point, we're going to turn it over to Roger, who is going to speak about, as Kathy mentioned, you know, collecting your metrics and reporting them back is very critical for your grant proposals. And he's going to speak a little bit about how they take that approach in collecting their metrics at their center. Roger?
Okay, thank you. So I'm talking about the effective approach to collecting and reporting metrics perspective. And this is just from my experience over a few years, that the good and making it easy for the client. Also, the importance of quantifying results in order to even get the metrics. Let's look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. So effective collection and reporting of metrics first really requires that you embrace that concept. I did not at first, and I failed. So as most of you know, in the past, distant past, requirements were activity-based, you know, a number of assessment performed and so on. And as many of you know, the grants that we're seeing now, and as was just in the last, have evolved coming out based for the pounds of hazardous waste reduced, kilowatt hours, electricity, and so on. And it was mentioned that this has made my job more difficult, and I did resist it at first. But I personally believe that the change to outcome-based reporting is a good thing. good thing. I believe that. Well, first, it demonstrates that the monies are being well spent and I achieve something. And for me, it's much more rewarding. It's such a good feeling for me to look back and see that all the work that I did actually achieved something concrete, that I was actually helping people, let alone the environment. And I can say that over the past dozen years at PennTap, my efforts have accomplished the things you see up here. And I'm proud of these accomplishments, and it makes me feel good. It confirms that I've actually been helping people. Tell your client that you embrace the concept, that you truly believe it's a good thing, this outcome-based collecting of outcomes, and that even collecting, though it's collecting metrics has made my job more difficult, but, telling your client that, that you believe it's worth it. So they will, after all, look at the accomplishments. So it does begin, as I've seen it, effective collection and reporting of metrics with the initial contact right up front with the client, clearly communicating with them up front the need to collect metrics. Most companies themselves need to collect and report metrics internally as well as in order to demonstrate progress to their senior management. In fact, for many of my clients, collecting metrics for environment and energy has been a difficult challenge for them. For effectively confronting
Everyone, I'm sorry for the technical difficulty. Roger is participating from a hotel, and he's had some connection issues. We're hoping it would go through. I believe that we're going to go ahead, and if we've lost Roger, then go ahead and move on to Keith, who is going to do a presentation on the same topic, but related from the environmental leadership program standpoint. And hopefully we'll get Roger back connected, and we'll check back in after Keith's presentation.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is Keith Bovair with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. I want to tell you a little bit about the metrics of the Virginia Environmental Excellence Program. In order to do that, I'll have to tell you a little bit about the program. I think this is going to be a little bit more down in the weeds than Roger was. Our program was started in 2000. It's been around for 14 years, so we're pretty well established. It's a voluntary program open to all facilities in Virginia, and recently, as of this year, we've opened it up to projects too. So we're hoping to see a lot of input from project-based efforts. The program focuses on sustainability, environmental management systems, pollution prevention, and going beyond compliance. There's 3 levels to the program, E2, E3, and E4. They stand for environmental enterprise, exemplary environmental enterprise, and extraordinary environmental enterprise. Your level of the program is based on how robust your environmental management system is. The top level, E4, you have a third-party verified EMS. On the E2 level, it's just sort of aspects and impacts of policy statements and objectives. We have an annual reporting requirement, and currently we have 400 members. Why do facilities participate? Well, we want facilities in the program because the more facilities, the more reporting we get. We want to have a lot of information, and we want to have accurate information. There's different drivers for facilities to be in the program, to move towards sustainability. There might be an executive order. There are permit fee discounts available, regulatory flexibility at the higher levels of the program, public recognition. You can see some pictures on the right-hand side of the screen of some facilities getting their plaques for joining the program. There is a driver to move up in the program. After 3 years, your permit fee discounts will disappear at the E2 level. As you move up in the program, you also are required to report more. The requirements of the program, there's a renewal due every 3 years, so there's a 3-year reporting cycle. You have to maintain regulatory compliance during that time. The annual reporting is tied to your EMS objectives. We go in and look at your EMS. We help you or help facilities pick out objectives. We help them straighten out their EMS if there's any issues. Supply any P2 information if that's going to help them. There's a minimum number of reporting commitments for each level. E2 is 1, E3 is 2, and E4 is 3, though we ask facilities to report on more than just the minimum. The 3-year reporting cycle gives us an advantage. It shows some continuity for us. Each reporting year ties back to the baseline year, not the previous year. And it helps us to root out anything that might be erroneous data. If you can see 2 or 3 years of data, you can pick out really big swings that might actually indicate some sort of mistake in reporting. We have established several reporting categories: waste, water, air, land use, energy use, with subcategories for each one. We tried to cast our net pretty wide so we can catch common efforts these days. Still some things fall outside of this net, but in order to aggregate the data, we had to have a stop. We had to have some categories to use. We have a website, an automated website that people report to. All calculations in the website are automated. They don't have to do any math on their own. They just fill in the numbers. Every year, once they have reported, they just update the report every year. We want to make the reporting process as simple as possible. We think a simple process is going to get you better data. And we wanted to make it easy because it's a voluntary program and we want people to stay in the program. And if it's really burdensome, we're afraid we're going to lose people. Along with the narratives, along with the numbers, there's a narrative, basically a BMP describing what they did and how they did it, which is very valuable to us. When we get all of our data, we do go through and look at all of the individual reports, and we don't do any spot verification, but if we see anything that doesn't make sense, we will go back and talk with the reporter, make sure their numbers are right. If they didn't reach their expected numbers, talk to them and see what might have happened. A failure to report results in a loss of benefits, so that's another driver to report. The reporting deadline bumps up against our billing deadline for permits, so if you don't get your report in time, you don't get your permit fee discounts. This is just a snapshot of our reporting website. You can see in the top, the category that this facility reported on was energy, purchased electricity. In their narrative box, they talked about their projects, what they did, what the results were, maybe future projects. We also asked for normalization. They normalized based on their occupancy rate. Down below, you can see their numbers. Kilowatt hours is an actual quantity. Their occupancy rate is a normalizing number. All this is calculated for them. We also asked for cost savings. There were no cost savings in this case, even though there were energy savings, because their utility rates went up. Oops. Why is this valuable to us? Well, and to EPA. We're able to track facility progress and improvements. We're able to identify trends. For instance, we've been seeing an increase in waste to energy over the past few years. We're able to share successful BMPs with other members in our group, and of course we share those with people outside of our VEEP program. We identify members that needed assistance. If your numbers are going the wrong way, you seem to be having problems, we go in and we see what we can do to help them and find out what went wrong. A failure provides as much information to us as a success. We also are able to go through and identify successful members as P2 resources, so when questions come to me and I don't know the answer, I can refer them to as maybe a mentor in our program. This is a snapshot of some of our results from 2013. These are aggregate results. except for the top line, which is tons of hazardous waste recycled. This is total tons of hazardous recycled in 2013. These other numbers show the improvement from the previous year. So reduced hazardous waste disposed went down by 1,935 tons from 2012 and down the line. You can also see at the bottom there's a total cost savings of $77 million. We always see great cost savings every year. When we report to EPA, we send this snapshot of our aggregate results, and then we also attach a spreadsheet that shows the individual reporting for each facility, each reporting category, subcategory, what their numbers were, and the BMPs related to their successes or failures. I think that's about it. I'd be happy to take any questions. And hopefully Roger's back.
Okay, let's see. First, let's see if Roger's back and we can get him set up again.
I am back.
Okay, great. Let's
Sorry
get
about
him
that.
set up. And no problem. And also, just as a reminder, please send your questions in, and we'll get those addressed at the after Roger's presentation.
Okay, I think I was here. That the importance of collecting outcome-based metrics deserves repeating and throughout the project. I talked earlier about upfront, but now throughout the project. And effective collection is a matter of developing, in my opinion, in my experience, a good interpersonal relationships with your client. An interpersonal relationship is defined as a strong, deep, or close association or acquaintance between two or more people that may range in duration from brief to enduring. I looked that up, and that's what it is defined as, and that's what I feel. I even want to emphasize, though, the term brief, because many of these relationships that we develop for these projects are brief in scope of a lifetime. But if you enter into this relationship with your client believing that brief means the relationship cannot be strong, deep, or close, then you won't succeed. Instead, you want to earn their respect and appreciation for you as a professional and a person, so that they will want to help you with your metrics. Now, you're not going to succeed in developing interpersonal relationships with all of your clients. It just some people just are not inclined to becoming personal at work or developing this with you. But if you don't try, it's not going to happen. But then I cannot say that in spite of this, even when I am able to become best of friends with the client, it's still often not easy to collect outcome-based metrics from the client after the project is done. It's not easy, but and for some of my clients, energy or environment metric sophisticated clients, it's not a problem. But for many, especially my small, medium-sized enterprises, if I make the responsibility of the client to convert outcomes to kilowatt hours reduced, for example, that just seldom happens. I have to make it easy for the client, trying to keep it simple. I have developed a survey for outcome-based metrics that seems to work okay for me. It may not be for everybody, but it works for me. I explain to my clients at the very beginning that they will receive the survey sometime after the project is completed, and they have had a chance to implement at least some of the recommendations. I tell them that my follow-up surveys are relatively painless, and depending on circumstances, though, the survey may be repeated quarterly, semi-annually, or even annually. I have successfully resurveyed some of my clients every year for up to 5 years. So as an example, this is a completed survey form that I've sent to a client that describes, gives a short title, reduce main electric compressor runtime, insulate steam piping, install high emissivity coatings in the name of furnaces, and a description recycling solvent, minimize batter waste, improve materials management. And with all these, we're giving to the client in our reports, developed the estimated implementation cost and the estimated annual savings. And this is all then provided in my survey, which then is left with this blank information for the client to fill in. And some clients come back and just give me the rank and say, for example, that 3 is implementation planned in the future. 1 is completed, 2, that is underway, planned in the future, and so on. Some clients, steam piping installated, they just say done, okay? Other clients, and in some cases, for this one, replacing the compressed air with the blower, they also actually, provide a change in the estimated cost. So that's useful to come back with. Coating the refractory inside the bell annealing furnaces. Come back and say that it's not underway, but it is in the long-term future plan. And if I have a good relationship with the client, I know that I can resurvey them a year from now to see if they've done it. Recycling solvents, again, just simply done. But I do also tell clients if they have problems, it's not always going to get the answer and not always going to get the result. And for this example, minimizing batter waste, they came back and said it's not no further action planned, it's just not feasible, and explain why it's not feasible. So that's the basis, and which has been quite successful for me. But finally, in my experience, in order to really obtain, and I've evolved in my thinking to believe that really in order to obtain and report quantifiable outcome-based metrics require that I conduct an assessment and provide recommendations that are quantified. And in this vein and thinking, for PennTap, I've divided my assessments into basic 4 categories: your walkthrough, your investment grade targeted assessment, investment grade assessment with on-site follow-up measurement and verification, and assessments with value index measurement and verification. So moving along, look at each one of these in brief. The walkthrough assessments are typically the recommendations in these are not quantified, and in the reports, we'll tell them convert to energy efficient lighting, recycle the solvent, or install a more energy efficient unit, HVAC unit, employ countercurrent rinsing, and so on. These are the least expensive assessments to perform, and they do have their value, and we do get situations where these are what we provide, and the clients may implement some of the recommendations, but in my experience, again, the chances that they will do anything is also enhanced if I'm able to quantify their savings for them. But obtaining, and in my experience, the outcome-based metrics for these types of assessments is quite difficult. The investment grade targeted assessment often begins with a walkthrough, but then moves and it may or may not include on-site monitoring and measurements. We do provide in the reports the pounds, tons, gallons of waste emissions reductions and dollar savings for each of the recommended opportunity. As far as then follow-up for getting results reported, the waste reductions are often verified from the company data when we do a follow-up. Energy things such as air emission reductions and also energy savings can be verified, but most are based on best engineering practice calculations and of the opportunities like we perform in the reports. But we find out whether or not they were actually implemented. And this is really the primary type of assessment that's performed by PennTap in the past. And these outcome metrics are really obtainable through that simple survey questionnaire that I mentioned. The third is the investment grade assessment with on-site follow-up and measurement. These types are mostly reserved for the energy assessments that we perform and are often requested, mostly reserved and requested when electric utility incentive projects are involved. For some projects, these may be indexed to variables such as production, but the indexing is pretty basic. These follow-up measurement verifications make sense for large projects where the cost of measurement verification is really a small percentage of the overall project cost and expected savings. It does not make sense to do these for smaller projects, which is common for many of our small to medium-sized business enterprises. The cost of measurement verification is not insignificant, and for smaller projects, it just doesn't make sense making them inappropriate and making them cost too much for the client to follow up. Then lastly, the investment grade assessment with on-site with a multivariable index measurement verification. We have these required for most of our ISO 50001 and superior energy performance type certification projects. Over the past few years, we've done 8 of these. It's usually required for plant-wide verification of energy savings. That where one or more variable is involved, such as the production quantity, weather, product mix, and so on, in terms of being able to quantify an actual savings. These do require substantial pre- and post-monitoring and measurement, and again, applicable only to large energy-saving projects for facilities. So in conclusion, collecting metrics, in my opinion, is essential for demonstrating performance and progress, and it can be fun. In this case, I'm really starting to count how many strokes it takes him to move the kayak about 20 yards, so I'm trying to quantify that. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Roger. I'm glad you were able to join us, and the audio was very much better the second time around. You had a lot of really useful information to share. I think it's interesting looking at, as Keith provided the view from a leadership program, a contingency of being in that leadership program is you have to provide these metrics in a technical assistance provider setting. It's hard. You do have to build that client relationship, and it's not a contingent part of doing that assessment, a requirement. So it makes it very difficult to always get those implementation numbers. So with this, let's go ahead and turn it back to questions, for any questions that anybody may have.
Okay, Lisa, we did have a couple of questions. The first is for Keith. Does Virginia report numbers aggregated or disaggregated?
We report them both. We report an aggregate number, and then we pull out the individual numbers.
Okay. And then our other question goes to, I guess, to Kathy. Are there measurement tools that EPA makes available to grantees to help compute their results?
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, we do on our website for the P2 program. Just a web search on EPA P2. There's a measurement thing to click on, and our greenhouse gas measurement tool and our cost savings tool are both there, as well as our tool for converting gallons of hazardous materials into our measure, which is pounds. We also accept people using other tools, and we just like when people let us know which tool they've used. Thanks.
Okay, those were the only questions we have, Lisa.
Okay. So at this point, we'll wrap it up. We hope that the information presented will be helpful to you and assist you with your grant writing. As we mentioned earlier, recording of the webinar will be posted on MPPR's website by the end of the month. And be sure to fill out your evaluation form. You know, this was just a snapshot. We weren't sure where people would be most interested in finding out more information. So which of these topics would you like to learn more about, get more specifics with detailed examples and those types of things? MPPR would certainly like to put on additional webinars to assist you. So filling out the survey gives you an opportunity to provide that input and also feedback on this webinar. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we certainly appreciate having you all listen in, and much appreciation to our panelist speakers for sharing their information. And at this time, we will conclude the webinar.